Here's my prototype of the fake books. You can see that they're different sizes on top. It sticks out from the back a little bit more than 2 inches. Now this is my prototype, and I still have to make a couple of adjustments to it. A couple of mistakes I made I want to fix. But for this project you need a ruler, a knife to cut the foam board, something to mark the foam board with. The board itself I picked up from Packetans. It's 1 foot high by 3 foot long. Other items you'll need is something to glue it with, either a glue gun or some glue, and a soldering iron. So let's go ahead and make the first part. What I've done is I've put marks on top and bottom of my foam board. What you want to do is cut 5 strips of the foam off, because you're going to use this for the sides and the top of the books. And 5 should be plenty for you to do this. I ended up using 4, and then I ended up cutting an extra one on my prototype. I also made these 3 inches instead of 2 because I want these to stick out a little bit farther than what my prototype is. So all you gotta do is take a straight edge, go ahead and line up your marks, and then take your straight edge and cut your strips off. I've gone ahead and cut my strips, but like when you work with this foam, you always get those little pieces hanging off the side and all over the place, and they stick to everything because of static electricity. What you can do is just take a piece of tape and go ahead and pat it down where the little loose pieces are. You can even run it along the sides of the pieces that you cut. Make sure you get everything. What's real nice is that it sticks right to the tape and it doesn't fly all over the place. So now that I got the strips done, what I'm going to do is decide how I'm going to make the actual books. Now, it's up to you how wide and how skinny you make the actual books horizontally, or vertically I should say. But I will tell you this, when you make the top part of it, don't get too exotic where you have one all the way up here and then one down here, because then it kind of becomes a pain to try to fill it in, make it look nice after you start painting it. So let me go ahead and mark my books, and then I'll show you the next step. Here's my foam board. I went ahead and I've marked how wide or how thin I'm going to make each book. I also went ahead and marked where I'm going to cut the foam out to indicate the different size books. I went ahead and just filled in where I'm going to cut off. So your next step is to go ahead and take your knife and your straight edge and carefully trim these out. Okay, the last piece off, a little bit of a quick cleanup. My next step is to go ahead and create the little valleys to give it the three-dimensional appearance of separate books. For that, we're going to utilize our straight edge and the soldering iron. What we're going to do is we're going to line up the straight edge and then take the very tip of the soldering iron and run it along the straight edge. The tip is hot enough to melt the foam really nice without having all kinds of pieces all over the place. I do want to say that you want to make sure that your room is ventilated and that you probably want a little fan blowing the fumes away. It's not very strong as far as the smell goes, but you just want to make sure you want to not breathe these fumes in. So let's go do that. Alright, just take your straight edge, set it up so that it's straight along the mark that you made. Take your soldering iron and put it near the foam. Now, if you're unsure about doing this step, you might want to take a piece of scrap foam and try doing this. You don't want to put it too deep, so only like the first 1/4 inch of the tip needs to be in there, but then it makes a really nice valley there. Next step is to go ahead and start gluing and cutting the pieces for the actual books. Since I kept both end books the same size as the foam, I'm just going to go ahead and put some glue on the edge and go ahead and carefully put it in place. Now after the glue dries or cools off, in this case with the glue gun, my next step is to take my other strips, line them up here with the top of the books, and go ahead and cut the width of the particular book. Now, since I didn't get too exotic with the actual size of the books as far as their height goes, for the most part I can cut a piece of foam and it'll cover also the side here. But like on this one here, I might have to put a little piece going vertically to show the side of the book. And that's pretty much the next step. Here's the inside of the books. This is the top of the actual books. And you can see how I put the individual pieces across. So coming down to the bottom, I went ahead and put a full piece here to help stand it upright. And I did have to put a couple of extra pieces in there, like right here. Here's another spot, and here, so that I had the side of the books as well. So my next step is to go ahead and primer the whole piece. Here we go. Here's the piece all primered. I do want to say be careful with the paint that you use. The particular brand of spray paint that I had reacted a little bit with the foam, and I did have some spots here where the foam melted a tiny bit. What I did with the other one that I'm working on is I hit it with a clear coat of sealer, and then I went ahead and I primered it. And then that's what I'm going to do with this one right now, is I'm going to go ahead and cover it with a clear coat of sealer before I get it ready to start painting the individual books. One of the things you do want to do is, if you see any spots sticking out here, take some 220 grit sandpaper and go ahead and lightly sand that down. That works out pretty good. Okay, I went ahead and spray painted the books with a clear coat, and then went ahead and took my black spray paint and spray painted the little valleys to bring out that detail. Tomorrow, after the black paint is dried, I'll go ahead and paint each individual book. Okay, this step we're going to go ahead and start painting the books. All you do is take a piece of cardboard, and the nice thing is that you can just go ahead and stick it in the valley, and then go ahead and spray one side. Go ahead and do all of them, the ones that you want to paint. Let it dry. We're going to flip it over and do the other side. Okay, for the top part of the books, all you need to do is just take some tape off the ones that you don't want to get covered right away, spray it, let it dry, then go ahead and repeat the process till all the tops of the books are done. Okay, the paint has dried. Now what I'm doing is I'm applying some black wash. Basically, I took a little bit of black paint, filled the rest of the cup up with water, made sure it was mixed up really good, and now I'm applying it to the top front of the books. What will happen is the black wash, and hopefully you can see it on this particular one where I got a little bit of the black wash, is it'll fill in all those little nooks and crannies that were created when the paint kind of dissolved the foam a little bit. That's why I didn't mind the paint dissolving it a little bit, because I knew I was going to do this step here. Now this will give it a little bit of a ancient look. Won't be able to see it very good with the black, but definitely under the other colors I think it looks really good. Unfortunately, I got a little crazy right here, so I gotta get a little bit of that out of there. But what it does is it makes the books look a little old. You know how when you pick up old books and they're dirty and maybe even a little bit mold if they've been hanging around? That's what we're creating here. Now what you're going to do is go ahead and put a coat on, let it dry, look at it, see if you got any spots that you might have missed, and go ahead and put a second coat on. Now after this dries and you're happy with how it looks, you'll go ahead and want to spray this with that spray sealer, because depending on the paint you're using, in this case I'm just using a little bit of acrylic water-based, so what ends up happening is, again, if these do get wet, I'll lose some of the black wash. Okay, my black wash is dried. I went ahead and sprayed it with a clear coat and let that dry so the black paint didn't wash out. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and put these detailed lines in a couple of the books. On my prototype, I actually had melted these grooves into the books, and the idea was I was going to go ahead and put some 1/8 or 1/4 inch dowels to give it a three-dimensional appearance, but it ended up not coming out like I liked it, so I went ahead and pulled that out. That's one of the things that held up my prototype. The other thing you can do is go ahead and write some titles in here if your hand's real good. I'm going to go see if I can find some good titles that might work. So here we go. I have all 3 sets of books completed. I did go ahead and put titles on all the books. Decided to go ahead and brainstorm some titles, but I didn't want to come up with 3 dozen different titles. So what I did was I looked up some runic symbols, went ahead and just made titles out of that, made some of them up myself. The other thing was they're all in silver because the other colors did not come out as good as I liked it to come out. So I just went ahead and said I'll put it all in silver. Now, I could have gone to like half-price books and picked up a bunch of hardbound books and then went ahead and put a bunch of detail and made them look really nice as far as Halloween books go. But there were several factors that stopped me from doing this. One, where the display is going to sit is not going to be right on top of the trick-or-treaters. So any kind of details that I put into it would get lost. Plus the actual place where it's at is going to be dimly lit. The other thing is it tends to rain here on Halloween, so I didn't want to have these books out, they get wet, then I got to sit them out for a couple of days to dry out. So if I didn't make sure that they were fully dry, they would end up be moldy by next Halloween. And the third is weight. These are foam. Alright, so they have almost no weight at all, so when I store them away they won't load down the storage box. Plus, these are going to be sitting in a room that's got temporary walls on it, and I didn't want the pressure of all these books to be sitting there and possibly tear the shelf down or actually damage or destroy the wall. Well, this is a nice simple project to put together, and I hope you enjoyed it.